enforcement or others.
There are other privacy concerns. Fears that your insurance company, for example, could download data to determine your driving habits and charge you more based upon your compliance with traffic laws. If black boxes were to be overlaid with GPS information, authorities could potentially have a gold mine of information about you, where you've been, what you've been up to. This at a time when Americans are increasingly concerned about the intrusion of government into their private lives. Jenna?
A very interesting story, Doug. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Right now, the jury is considering a rather knotty set of questions in the Whitey Bulger racketeering trial. Take a look at a live shot of the courthouse in Boston, where jurors have begun a fifth day of deliberations. The 83-year-old Bulger is charged in a 32-count racketeering indictment that includes 19 killings. Daniel Schorr is a former prosecutor. He joins us live. Eric Schwartzreich is a criminal defense attorney. Gentlemen, good to see you. Here's the question this morning the jurors sent out to the judge. If someone else is guilty, do we automatically find Bulger guilty simply because he's associated? Now, Dan, that word associated is rather tricky. If, jurors, you mean by that he was involved in a conspiracy acting in concert, then the answer is yes, right?
Right. If he's part of an ongoing criminal organization, a conspiracy acting in concert, helping out, if he encourages a criminal act, the key answer, the simple answer is that no, he's not automatically guilty, but there's a lot of things that he could have done implicitly or explicitly that would make him guilty for some of these crimes.
Yeah, you know, Eric, we don't convict people based on, sort of guilt by association, but rather there has to be an overt act in further of the conspiracy so that they're acting together. And in that case, yes, the answer would be yes, would it not?
Greg, absolutely. The issue and the question that the jurors had was very specific. The word they used was automatic. Even if they believe that it's automatic that someone else committed a crime, committed a murder, they can't necessarily, the jury cannot find an inference of guilt. They have to find that he was aiding, that he was abetting, that he was involved. I mean, Greg, if you and I were to rob a bank, which would never happen, but if you and I were to rob a bank and they believe that you were the bank robber, you're not automatically going to find me guilty because they believed you robbed the bank. There'd have to be a nexus, a correlation. So the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorney are having this spirited debate. Each side wants their point, but the judge is right. It is not automatic, and the judge should instruct that it's definitely not automatic if you believe someone else committed the crime. There has to be a correlation.
One worries the jurors will get confused by that further instruction, but nevertheless, want to move on to the other case we're following, the Fort Hood shooting. 13 people died. Nidal Hassan is on trial. He's defending himself, and the jury is set to resume. They've had 40 witnesses so far, and for the most part, Dan, Hassan just kind of sits there. He doesn't challenge them. But when you think about it, I mean, what's he going to do? It would be absurd for him to deny that he did it.
Right, you're having all these witnesses testify about this tragic day where so many people were killed, others were shot and injured, and he's not doing any meaningful cross-examination, if any cross-examination at all. So his standby attorneys who were there to advise him while he represents himself, because he asked to represent himself, they want out of the case because they're saying, how can we be a part of this defense that's not a meaningful defense? But the judge, I believe correctly, is ordering the standby lawyers to stay on the case. Their job is to be there to apprise him of the law and strategy if he has questions, right. And this will help prevent a reversal on appeal.
Eric, the defense would otherwise be called a necessity defense. It's sick and twisted in this case, but the defendant is essentially saying, I had to kill Americans to save the Taliban, but the judge has said, no, sir, that's too speculative. I will not allow you to do that. So what's the defendant going to argue?
Greg, the old saying, you've heard it, we've all heard it, he who represents himself as a fool for a client. The judge did not specifically allow that defense, and Hassan wanted it. It really appears that Hassan might be on a suicide mission of his own. He's not asking questions, he's entitled to represent himself, and Dan is right. It's very bizarre when you're accused of defendant, especially of a heinous crime when you're accused of shooting people, for him to confront, which he has a right to, and cross-examine the victims, or the alleged victims in this case. Right. His defense is very difficult, Greg, but he's not really doing anything. Right. He's sitting there. I think he's won one objection. I mean, looks like he's just, on a mission to either maybe set up an appeal or to kill himself.
Eric and Dan, thank you both. Afraid we're out of time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Don't go away.
This man is about to be the millionth customer.
If I go ahead of you?
Instead, we had someone go ahead of him and win $50,000.